The air in Locust Ridge, Tennessee, always smelled of wood smoke and pine, a comforting blanket over the Smoky Mountains for 9-year-old Dolly Parton. It also smelled of dreams. Her family's cabin, though small and overflowing with siblings, was a haven of music. Her mama sang, her daddy played, and Dolly? Well, Dolly just hummed and strummed on anything she could get her hands on, an old mandolin, a worn-out guitar, even a corncob with rubber bands. It was a sweltering summer afternoon in 1955 when the world changed for Dolly. The family had gathered around the radio, its wooden casing warm from the sun filtering through the window. Static crackle then cleared, and a voice unlike any Dolly had ever heard poured out. It was wild and free, full of a raw energy that made her scalp tingle and her heart thump, a strange rhythm in her chest. "That's Elvis Presley," Mama said, fanning herself with a newspaper. "He's got the whole country talking." Dolly didn't just talk. She listened. She listened to the way his voice wrapped around the words, the way it dipped and soared, the sheer audacity of it. It wasn't just a song. It was a feeling. A whole new world opening up beyond the mountain hollers. She imagined him on stage hips, swaying, a dazzling smile on his face. She'd seen pictures in the newspapers. Her older sister, Stella, brought home a handsome young man with dark, slick-back hair and eyes that seemed to sparkle even in black and white. From that day on, Elvis was everywhere for Dolly. Not physically, of course, but in her mind, in her thoughts, in the very air she breathed. She'd hum his tunes while doing chores, imagining herself singing alongside him. She'd doodle his name in the margins of her school books, carefully erasing it before anyone could see. It was a secret, a precious, gleaming secret she kept locked deep in her heart. She listened to every radio broadcast, eagerly awaiting the next Elvis song. When Heartbreak Hotel hit the airwaves, Dolly felt a pang that was both sad and exhilarating. She wondered what kind of heartbreak he'd known to sing a song like that. She imagined comforting him, telling him everything would be all right. It was a silly thought, she knew, but it made her feel a warmth spread to her chest. Her siblings teased her about her endless singing, her focus on the radio. "Dolly's got stars in her eyes," her brother Bobby would say. Rolling his eyes, Dolly would just smile, a little mysterious. They didn't know the half of it. The stars in her eyes weren't just general dreams of fame. They were specific, bright, and had a handsome face and a voice that could melt glaciers. One evening, perched on the porch swing, strumming her little guitar, Dolly started to hum a new tune. It wasn't an Elvis song, but it was inspired by him, by the way he made her feel. It was a melody light and hopeful, with a touch of melancholy that only she understood. She pictured him far away in Memphis singing to thousands. She pictured herself, a little girl in the mountains, singing to the crickets and the fireflies. Her papa, quiet and observant, noticed her deep concentration. "What's that tune, darlin'?" he asked, taking a drag from his pipe. Dolly hesitated. "Just something," she mumbled, strumming a little faster. She couldn't tell him it was a feeling, a wish, a secret crush on the biggest star in the world. It felt too big, too personal, too much like a piece of her own heart. But the seed was planted. Elvis Presley wasn't just a singer to Dolly. He was a muse. He was the reason her imagination soared, the reason her fingers itched to write melodies that captured the ache and joy of young love. He was the secret ingredient in her burgeoning ambition, pushing her to learn more, to write more, to dream bigger than the Smoky Mountains could ever hold. She knew deep down that one day she wouldn't just be listening to his songs. She'd be writing her own. And maybe, just maybe, one of them would be for him. She spent hours by herself behind the cabin or down by the creek. She'd sing Elvis songs, trying to mimic his inflections. Then she'd sing her own, letting her voice find its unique twang and power. She thought about what it would be like to stand on a stage bathed in lights, just like Elvis. The idea thrilled her, but also terrified her a little. Still, the image of him, so confident and magnetic, urged her on. She felt a connection, a strange unspoken understanding with his faraway star. It was as if his music was calling to her, inviting her into a world where anything was possible. And for a young girl from Locust Ridge, that world and the handsome man who lived in it was the most captivating secret she'd ever kept. She closed her eyes, strummed a chord, and let the music carry her dreams further than any mountain path ever could. As the years passed, Dolly's secret crush on Elvis Presley didn't fade. It deepened, becoming an integral part of her very being. The Smoky Mountains were still her home, but her mind was constantly traveling beyond them, fueled by the electrifying sounds of Elvis on the radio and the tantalizing glimpses of him in movie magazines. He wasn't just a singer anymore. He was a phenomenon, starring in movies, drawing screaming crowds wherever he went. Each new photograph, each new song was a fresh burst of inspiration. She'd sneak off with her old guitar to the quietest spots, a patch of sunshine behind the barn or a secluded bank by the Little Pigeon River, and she'd practice. She'd sing Elvis's hits, perfecting the inflections, imagining herself on a grand stage. Then she'd start on her own songs. Her melodies were becoming more sophisticated, her lyrics more poignant. Unbeknownst to anyone, many of them carried a subtle echo of her secret muse. She imagined conversations with him late at night, under the thin mountain moonlight. She'd picture herself telling him about her dreams, about her family, about the music that filled her soul. She'd imagine him listening, his dark eyes kind and understanding. In her mind, he wasn't just Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll. He was a kindred spirit, a fellow dreamer. Her ambition, already strong, grew wings because of him. She didn't just want to be a singer anymore. She wanted to be a jocker. She wanted to write songs that touched people's hearts just like his did. And she started to believe with a fierce, quiet certainty that one day she would write a song so perfect, so full of unspoken emotion, that it would reach him. It would be a song that, even if he never knew the true inspiration, would feel like it was meant for him. Dolly's family saw her growing talent. Her mama encouraged her. Her papa listened with a proud twinkle in his eye. She started performing in local churches at school functions, her voice clear and strong, already possessing that unique blend of country twang and soaring power. People would often say, "That little Dolly, she's got something special." One afternoon, Stella brought home a fan magazine dedicated entirely to Elvis. Dolly devoured every page, her heart fluttering. There were pictures of him meeting fans, signing autographs. She lingered on a close-up of his eyes. They seemed to hold so much emotion, so much intensity. "He looks lonely," she whispered to herself. The thought sparked a new melody in her mind, a soft, yearning tune. She grabbed her guitar. The melody flowed easily, carrying a gentle sadness. What would she say to him if she ever met him? Not about the screaming crowds or the flashing lights, but about the quiet moments, the feelings he might keep hidden. The song started to form a conversation meant only for him, a whisper across miles. It was still just a fragment, a feeling, but it was taking shape. "You're always humming that same tune," her sister Willadine said one day, interrupting Dolly's quiet moment by the creek. "Is it a love song?" Dolly blushed, clutching her guitar tighter. "Sort of," she admitted. It was, in a way, a love song to an idea. The yearning to leave the mountains and go to Nashville intensified. Nashville was where the music was. Nashville was where dreams were made. Nashville was closer to Memphis, closer to Elvis. The idea seemed impossibly grand, but Dolly held on to it fiercely. She imagined walking those city streets playing her songs, getting discovered, and perhaps, just perhaps, somehow their paths would cross. She'd spend hours thinking about what she'd say. If she ever met him, would she be nervous? Would she be able to speak? Or would she just be overwhelmed by the sheer presence of him? She rehearsed it in her head, 100 different scenarios. She'd tell him how his music made her feel, how it inspired her. She'd try to be calm and collected, not like those screaming fans she saw in the magazines. She wanted him to see her as a fellow artist, not just another admirer. This secret crush was a powerful motivator. It pushed her to write more, to hone her craft, to truly believe in her talent. It was the hidden engine behind her determination. She knew the journey to Nashville would be hard, but the thought of Elvis, the distant shining star, fueled her resolve. She dreamed of a day when her music would echo his, not in imitation but in spirit, a testament to the profound influence he had on her young, aspiring heart. The song for him, though still nebulous, was becoming a beacon, a secret project she poured her soul into. It would be her greatest secret, her deepest offering. The day Dolly Parton finally left Locust Ridge for Nashville was bright and clear, but her heart was a swirl of emotions. Excitement pulsed through her veins, a thrilling current that promised a new beginning, but underneath it a tremor of fear lingered. She was just a small town girl with big dreams, stepping into a world that felt impossibly vast and fast. Her family waved goodbye, their faces a mixture of pride and worry. "Don't you forget us now, Dolly?" Mama called out, her voice thick with emotion. Dolly promised she wouldn't. She clutched her guitar's worn case, holding not just an instrument, but a decade of dreams, including the most secret one, the one about Elvis. She pictured him, a phantom guiding light in the distance, a silent cheer from the superstar she'd never met. Nashville was a jumble of noise and hurried footsteps, a sharp contrast to the quiet mountains. The air smelled of exhaust fumes and hot pavement, mixed with the irresistible scent of barbecue and, faintly, the sweet perfume of music drifting from open doors. Dolly found a small, affordable room, barely big enough for her and her guitar, and immediately set about the daunting task of making her mark. The early days were tough. She pounded pavements, knocked on doors, played her songs for anyone who would listen. Often just a tired receptionist or a distracted producer. She sang in smoky honky-tonks for sparse crowds, her voice sometimes lost amidst clinking glasses and chatter. Doubts crept in insidious whispers in the quiet of her tiny room. Was she good enough? Would anyone ever truly hear her? Then she'd see a magazine cover with Elvis's face or hear one of his songs playing on the radio, and a fresh wave of determination would wash over her. He had started somewhere, hadn't he? He had faced Chanor, hadn't he? People talked about his generosity, his charisma, his incredible talent. They also talked about the pressures of his life, the constant demands. Dolly listened, soaking it all in, feeling a strange empathy for the man behind the myth. She imagined him alone in a hotel room, away from the crowds, perhaps feeling the same kind of weariness she sometimes felt. These thoughts only deepened her affection, making him more human, less of an untouchable icon. One afternoon, at a small music publishing house, Dolly heard a snippet of conversation. "Elvis is cutting some new tracks in Memphis next month, maybe even coming through Nashville for a bit beforehand." Her heart leaped into her throat. He was so close, yet still so far. She forced herself to focus, to smile, to appear nonchalant, but inside a frantic hope began to bloom. She continued writing more furiously than ever. Her songs were raw and honest, pulling from her mountain roots, but also from the burgeoning emotions of her new life in the city. And that special song, the one for Elvis, slowly but surely began to solidify in her mind. She pictured it as a delicate conversation, a gentle offering. It wasn't a rock and roll anthem like his, but a country ballad full of heart and soul, reflecting her own unique voice. She tried out bits of the melody on her guitar, humming the first lines to herself. It was about unspoken feelings, about admiration that ran deeper than fame. It was about seeing the person, not just the star. She'd write a line, then pause, wondering if it captured the essence of what she felt. Would he ever hear it? Would he understand? The thought was both thrilling and terrifying. One night, after a particularly disheartening open mic session, where she felt like she sang to empty chairs. Dolly walked home under the Nashville streetlights, feeling deflated. Then, from a nearby diner, she heard it. "Can't help falling in love." Elvis's smooth, melodic voice filling the night. She stopped, leaning against a lamppost, and closed her eyes. The song washed over her a warm comfort. It reminded her why she was here, why she was fighting so hard. It reminded her of that first spark, that instant connection. She knew she had to keep going, not just for herself, but for that little girl back in the mountains who had dared to dream of a world where her songs could reach the biggest star. The song for Elvis was her secret weapon, her private ambition. It was the purest expression of her hopes, a testament to the journey she was on. She hurried back to her room, pulled out her notebook, and began to write, the words flowing freely now, infused with a renewed sense of purpose. Nashville was challenging, but it was also a place of endless possibility, a place where just maybe dreams as big as hers could come true, and a secret song could find its way home. Dolly's persistence in Nashville was starting to pay off. Small doors were opening. She landed a regular gig at a local club, performing her own songs to a slowly growing audience. Songwriting opportunities started to trickle in, too. She was getting cuts, meaning other artists were recording her songs. It wasn't stardom yet, not by a long shot, but it was progress, solid and real. Being in the Nashville music scene meant being surrounded by people who had stories. Everyone, it seemed, had an Elvis story. Producers talked about his intense focus in the studio. Musicians recounted his incredible stage presence. Even waiters at the popular music haunts would whisper about his favorite foods. Dolly absorbed every anecdote, every whisper. Each one added another brushstroke to the portrait of the man she admired so deeply. She heard about his legendary kindness, how he'd often surprise people with gifts or help out those in need. She heard about his spiritual side, his love for gospel music. These stories made him even more compelling, more human. He wasn't just the hip-swiveling rock star. He was a complex, soulful individual. Her crush matured from youthful infatuation into a profound respect and admiration. Dolly started to feel a strange sense of proximity to him. Even though they'd never met, she'd bump into musicians who had played on his records. She'd meet producers who had worked in the same studios. It was as if she was moving in ever closer concentric circles around his orbit. One memorable night, Dolly was performing at a small venue, singing one of her heartfelt ballads. Afterward, a seasoned session musician who had played on countless country and rock records approached her. "That was some song, Dolly," he said, his eyes twinkling. "You write that one yourself?" "Doc, yes, sir. You got a real knack for it," he continued. "Reminds me of a conversation I had with Elvis once about honest emotion in music. He'd appreciate a song like that." Dolly's heart did a little flip. Elvis, her song. Connection, however indirect, felt like a jolt of electricity. He lacks honest songs," she managed to ask, trying to sound casual. "More than anything," said, "the best songs are the ones that spill straight from the heart." That conversation solidified Dolly's resolve. The special song for Elvis, the one she'd been carefully nurturing, had to be honest. It had to be from the heart. It couldn't be a typical fan song gushing about his fame. It had to be about the deeper connection she felt, the understanding she had of the man she saw behind the dazzling image. She started carrying a small notebook everywhere, scribbling down lines, melodies, and ideas. The song was becoming clearer now, almost fully formed in her mind. It was a song about seeing someone truly, about the quiet admiration that doesn't demand anything in return. It would be wistful, tender, and uniquely Dolly. There were moments, too, of thrilling near misses. She'd be leaving a recording studio and someone would say, "You just missed Elvis. He was here an hour ago." Or she'd be at a party and a whisper would go around, "Elvis is here, in the back room." Dolly would feel a sudden rush of adrenaline, her palms getting sweaty. She'd try to catch a glimpse to see him across a crowded room, but he was always just out of reach. a fleeting shadow, a vibrant presence she couldn't quite touch. Each near miss was a mixture of disappointment and renewed hope. It kept the flame alive. It reminded her that he was real, that he was here, that their paths truly could cross. One day she imagined the day they would meet. What would she wear? What would she say? Would she be able to look him in the eye without her heart completely giving out? She practiced her composure in front of her mirror, trying to imagine herself as a confident, established artist, not just a starry-eyed fan. The more she thought about it, the more she realized that the song, the secret song, was her true offering. It was a way to communicate with him even if they never spoke a word. It was a piece of her soul, wrapped in melody and lyrics, meant for his ears alone. The idea of writing it, perfecting it, and somehow getting it to him became her most profound goal. The whispers about him, the glimpses of his world, only intensified her drive. She knew the song was almost ready to bloom. The little room Dolly rented in Nashville was often a mess of crumpled lyric sheets, half-eaten sandwiches, and her trusty guitar. But amidst the chaos, a quiet magic was happening. The song was finally taking tangible shape. Dolly would spend hours, sometimes all night, hunched over her notebook, the lamp casting a warm glow on the page. She'd hum, pluck chords on her guitar, erase, rewrite, and then start all over again, chasing the perfect phrase, the most honest melody. This wasn't just any song. It was a distillation of years of secret feelings, of silent admiration. It had to be perfect. It had to be universal enough to stand on its own as a great love song. But secretly, every note, every word would be steeped in her feelings for Elvis. She started with the title. It had to convey a deep, abiding connection, something that transcended the superficial glitz of fame. She played with ideas. My king, heart of gold, stardust. None of them quite fit. Then, late one night, as she looked out her window at the twinkling Nashville lights, the phrase came to her. I will always love you. It was simple, direct, and profoundly emotional. It wasn't about romantic love in the traditional sense, but about an enduring, respectful affection. A recognition of his impact on her. It was about letting go, but holding onto the feeling. It was about an admiration that didn't demand anything, just offered pure, unselfish devotion. The verses flowed, weaving a narrative of understanding and appreciation. She wrote about the paths they had taken, his soaring to unimaginable heights, hers slowly climbing, always looking towards him. She thought about his struggles, the loneliness of fame she'd heard whispered about. She wanted to acknowledge that, to offer comfort through her words. If I should stay, I would only be in your way. So I'll go, but I know I'll think of you every step of the way. These lines felt right. They expressed the distance, the understanding that their worlds were so different. It wasn't a plea to be with him, but an acknowledgement of his immense presence in her life, even from afar. It was about stepping aside, letting him live his life while she carried her feelings. The chorus, however, was the heart of it all. And I will always love you. I will always love you. Maybe she imagined him hearing it, perhaps feeling a flicker of recognition, a sense of being truly seen. She poured every ounce of her longing, her respect, and her quiet adoration into those 4 words. She agonized over the bridge, trying to capture the bittersweet nature of her feelings. It wasn't a sad song, not really. It was hopeful, filled with a quiet strength. I hope life treats you kind, and I hope you have all you've dreamed of. And I wish you joy and happiness, but above all this, I wish you love. These lines spoke directly to her desire for his well-being, her wish for his happiness, even if it wasn't with her. It was a selfless love born out of respect and deep admiration. As the song took shape, Dolly felt a profound sense of release. It was like she was finally articulating something that had been living inside her for years. She played it over and over, sometimes softly, sometimes with full voice, letting the notes resonate in her small room each time. It felt more right, more true. She was careful, though, to never tell anyone the true inspiration behind it. When she played it for her publisher or fellow musicians, they would marvel at its emotional depth. "Dolly, this is a masterpiece," her producer, Fred Foster, said one day, his eyes wide. "Who did you write this for?" Dolly just smiled mysteriously. "Just a feeling, Fred, something from the heart." She would blush, knowing the secret, but unwilling to reveal it. How could she explain that this ballad, so personal and tender, was for the biggest rock and roll star in the world? It felt too vulnerable, too intimate. It was her secret, her connection, and she guarded it fiercely. Finishing the song was a pivotal moment. It was no longer just a dream. It was a tangible piece of art, imbued with her deepest emotions. Now came the daunting question. How would she ever get it to him? How would Elvis Presley, the king, ever hear a song written by a still struggling country singer from the mountains, a song written just for him? The challenge seemed insurmountable, but the hope, like the song itself, burned bright and unyielding. The song was complete. Now it needed a journey, with "I Will Always Love You" polished and perfected. Dolly felt a mix of immense pride and daunting uncertainty. The song was a part of her, a raw piece of her soul, and she believed in it with every fiber of her being. Getting it heard, truly heard, was the next mountain to climb. Her career in Nashville was gaining momentum, but slowly. She was building a reputation as a gifted joker and a powerful vocalist. But she was still a long way from the superstar status of Elvis. She performed "I Will Always Love You" at her club gigs, always introducing it as a song about a heartfelt goodbye. The audiences were captivated. People would often come up to her afterward, tears in their eyes, saying how much the song moved them. "It just hits you right here," a woman once said, pressing a hand to her chest. Dolly would nod a small, knowing smile on her lips. They didn't know the whole story, but they felt the emotion, and that was enough for now. One day, Dolly received a call that made her heart skip a beat. Porter Wagoner, a well-known country star with his own popular television show, had heard her sing and was offering her a spot as a regular on his show, The Porter Wagoner Show. This was a huge break, a step up that could put her in front of millions of viewers. This was it. This was the big chance. As she prepared for her television debut, Dolly couldn't help but think of Elvis. He was a television phenomenon too. Would he ever watch The Porter Wagoner Show? Would he ever stumble upon her performance? It was a long shot, but the possibility, however slim, fueled her excitement. She poured herself into her performances on the show, captivating audiences with her wit, her charm, and her powerful voice. She sang her hits, she sang duets with Porter, and she always made sure to include "I Will Always Love You." Each time she sang it, she imagined Elvis listening somewhere far away, his eyes thoughtful, his heart perhaps touched by the sincerity of the words. One afternoon, during a break from filming, Porter pulled Dolly aside. "Dolly," he said, his voice serious, "that song, 'I Will Always Love You,' that's a special one, a real hit. We should record it." Dolly's eyes widened. Recording it meant it would be on an album available to a wider audience. Meant it could be played on the radio across the country. It meant it had an even greater chance of reaching him. "Oh, Porter, that would be wonderful," she exclaimed, trying to keep her composure. The recording session was exhilarating. Dolly sang with all her heart, every note imbued with the secret meaning she carried. She imagined Elvis somewhere hearing this, feeling the emotion she poured into it. She knew it was a long shot, but the thought spurred her on. Months later, the album was released, and "I Will Always Love You" began to climb the country charts. It became a significant hit for Dolly, solidifying her place as a rising star in country music. She started to do interviews, appear on more TV shows. She was on her way. Then came the rumor, a whisper that traveled through Nashville like wildfire. Elvis, Presley's manager, Colonel Tom Parker had heard "I Will Always Love You." And apparently, Elvis himself had heard it and loved it. Dolly's world tilted. Could it be true? She tried not to get her hopes up too high, but the very thought was enough to send shivers down her spine. The song was working. It was reaching him, or at least getting closer. A few weeks later, something concrete happened. Publisher called her, his voice crackling with excitement. "Dolly, you are not going to believe this," Colonel Parker called. "Elvis wants to record 'I Will Always Love You.'" Dolly dropped the phone. Her knees buckled. It was real. It was actually happening. The song, her song written in secret for him, was going to be sung by him. The very thought made her dizzy. This was the ultimate validation, the most incredible culmination of her secret crush. She wanted to scream, to cry, to dance all at once. She imagined him in the studio, his legendary voice wrapped around her words. The words meant just for him. The dream which had felt so impossible for so long was now within reach, shimmering, inviting her closer. The news that Elvis Presley wanted to record "I Will Always Love You" sent Dolly into a whirlwind of emotions. Elation, disbelief, and a nervous anticipation she'd never known before. This wasn't just a career milestone, it was a cosmic alignment. The song. Her secret offering was about to be embraced by its muse. Phone calls flew back and forth between her manager, her publisher, and Colonel Tom Parker. There were discussions about contracts, royalties, and recording dates. Dolly tried to remain professional, but her heart pounded like a drum whenever Elvis's name came up. She imagined him listening to her demo, his famous eyes closed, his head nodding to the melody. Did he feel the unspoken message? Did he sense the depth of her admiration woven into every note? She learned that Elvis was planning to record the song in Los Angeles. While she wasn't asked to be present for the recording, stars of his caliber rarely had the original knocker in the studio unless they were co-writers or producers. Dolly still felt a profound sense of connection. Her words, her melody, were traveling across the country destined for his voice. During this time, Dolly was also increasingly in demand. She was appearing on more national television shows, doing more interviews, and her own tours were growing bigger. The music world was becoming smaller, more interconnected, and the chances of her finally meeting Elvis felt higher than ever. One afternoon, she was attending a prestigious music industry luncheon in Los Angeles, a networking event filled with producers, managers, and other artists. The room hummed with conversations, the clinking of glasses, and the soft strains of a jazz band. Dolly, feeling a mix of nerves and excitement, was chatting with a well-known record executive when she heard a sudden hush fall over the room. Heads turned towards the entrance. Her heart leaped. There he was, Elvis Presley, walking into the room, surrounded by a small entourage. He was even more handsome, more macabre than in any photo or movie. His presence filled the space, a palpable aura of star power and quiet dignity. Go up to him, introduce herself. Would he even know who she was? She was a rising star in country, but he was the king. She watched as he moved through the room, shaking hands, exchanging polite nods. He had a slight smile, a gentle grace. She saw his eyes scan the crowd briefly before moving on. She desperately wanted him to look her way, to catch her eye, to somehow sense her presence. She imagined herself walking over, extending a hand, saying, "Mr. Presley, I'm Dolly Parton. I wrote, 'I Will Always Love You.'" But her feet felt glued to the floor. A wave of shyness, mixed with the sheer overwhelming reality of his presence, swept over her. She suddenly felt like that little girl in the holler again, listening to him on the radio, too small and insignificant to even breathe in the same air. She watched as he was ushered to a table deeper into the room. Her chance, it seemed, was slipping away. She thought about the song, the countless hours she'd poured into it, the secret messages she'd woven into its fabric. Would he ever know? Just as she was about to resign herself to another near miss, something happened. As Elvis turned to take his seat, his gaze for just a fleeting second swept across her. Their eyes met. It was only for a fraction of a second. A blink. But in that moment, Dolly felt a strange, undeniable connection. Was it just wishful thinking, or did he truly see her? Did he know? He offered a small, almost imperceptible nod, a gentle acknowledgement, before turning his attention to the people at his table. Dolly felt her knees go weak. A nod from Elvis Presley. She spent the rest of the luncheon in a daze, watching him from afar, the brief eye contact burning in her memory. She hadn't spoken to him, hadn't formally met him. But a silent conversation had passed between them. The song was a bridge, an invisible thread connecting their worlds. She left the luncheon feeling exhilarated and strangely at peace. The song was doing its work, reaching him in ways she could never have imagined. And the anticipation for his recording of it only intensified, knowing now that she had truly been in his orbit, however briefly. The phone call from Colonel Tom Parker came just a few days after the industry luncheon. Dolly's manager relayed the news. Elvis was officially going into the studio to record "I Will Always Love You." The following week, it was happening. Culmination of years of quiet adoration, of secret dreams, was finally materializing. Dolly felt a strange mix of emotions. Joy, of course, but also a deep sense of bittersweetness. The song was leaving her in a way it was taking on a new life. While thrilling, it also felt like a release, a letting go of that most personal, most guarded secret. She spent the next few days in a haze of anticipation. She imagined the recording session, Elvis in the vocal booth, the musicians, the engineers. She pictured him pouring his own unique soul into her words, shaping them with his legendary voice. Would he infuse it with rock and roll power, or a country tenderness? Would it be a quiet ballad, or a soaring anthem? Her phone rang. It was Colonel Parker. Dolly's heart hammered. "Miss Parton." His voice was gruff, businesslike. "Elvis is in the studio right now, working on your song." Dolly could barely breathe. "Oh, that's wonderful, Colonel. He loves it. Says it's one of the most beautiful songs he's ever heard." Dolly squeezed her eyes shut. He loved it. The words were a balm to her soul. "There's just one thing," Parker continued, his voice taking on a harder edge. "Elvis's schedule is tight. If he's going to record it, he wants the publishing rights to the song. All of them." Dolly's mind reeled. Publishing rights meant giving up control, giving up future royalties. It meant the song, her most personal creation, would entirely belong to Elvis's camp. For a budding noker, this was a massive ask. Giving up the publishing was almost unheard of, especially for a song that was already proving to be a hit for her. She took a deep breath. She thought of her family, the years of struggle. She thought of her own career, the need to protect her future. And she thought of the song, the secret meaning, the love she had poured into it for him. "Colonel," Dolly said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands, "thank you so much for the offer. It means the world to me that Elvis wants to sing my song." She paused, gathering her courage. "But I can't give up the publishing. It's my song, my baby. I just can't." There was a moment of silence on the other end. Then a huff. "Miss Parton, you understand what you're turning down? This is Elvis Presley. This could make you a millionaire overnight." "I understand, Colonel," Dolly said, her voice firm. "And I'm truly grateful, but I just can't do it." Call ended shortly after. With Parker clearly frustrated, Dolly hung up the phone, her hands shaking. She had just said no. To Elvis Presley, to the man she had adored for years, to the opportunity of a lifetime. A wave of regret, doubt, and sadness washed over her. Had she made a terrible mistake? Would he hate her now? Days turned into weeks, and Dolly heard nothing more about Elvis recording her song. The silence was deafening. The dream felt shattered. She imagined him being told of her refusal, his disappointment. The song, which had been a bridge, now felt like a barrier. She felt a profound sense of loss, as if she had lost her chance to truly connect with him. But beneath the heartache, a quiet pride began to surface. She had stood her ground. She had protected her artistic integrity, her connection to her baby. The song was hers, truly hers, a testament to her journey and her feelings. She continued to sing, "I Will Always Love You," at her concerts. And it continued to resonate deeply with audiences. It became one of her signature songs, a classic in its own right. She held on to the secret of its true inspiration. A poignant, bittersweet memory. The silence from Elvis's camp meant he wouldn't be recording it. The dream of his voice wrapping around her words was gone. Yet something else had been affirmed. Her own strength, her own artistic conviction. The song's journey had taken an unexpected turn. But it was still a journey of love, of truth, and of the unique path Dolly Parton was forging for herself. She would always love him, and she would always love the song, even if its ultimate destination had changed. The news about Elvis not recording "I Will Always Love You" due to the publishing dispute eventually made its way through the Nashville grapevine. Dolly learned that he had indeed loved the song, even performing it for her manager, Porter Wagoner, one day at a recording studio. Porter told Dolly that Elvis had sounded absolutely magnificent, putting his whole heart into the ballad. He truly felt it, Dolly Porter had said. He understood that song. This news was a balm to Dolly's heart. He might not be recording it, but he had heard it. He had sung it, and he had understood. That was the real prize. The thought of Elvis in a quiet moment wrapping his voice around her private thoughts was more precious than any recording contract. Life went on for Dolly. Her career continued to soar. "I Will Always Love You" became a certified hit, a country classic that touched millions of people. She was now a bona fide star, touring the country, appearing on major television shows, and selling out concerts. She had achieved her dreams, and then, some years passed. Elvis's star continued to shine, though his public life became increasingly complex. Dolly followed his career from afar, always with that quiet affection in her heart. She heard about his struggles, his triumphs, and the immense pressure he was under. Her admiration never wavered. Then came the shocking news in August 1977. Elvis Presley was gone. Dolly felt a profound sense of loss, a personal grief for the man who had been such a quiet, powerful inspiration in her life. It was as if a part of her own young dreams had passed away with him. She watched the news reports, the tributes, the outpouring of love from fans all over the world. She saw images of him from his wild early days to his later, more reflective period. And in her heart, she held on to the memory of that brief, fleeting eye, contact at the luncheon, and the knowledge that he had loved her song. A few months after his passing, Dolly was doing an interview for a major magazine. Conversation turned to her songwriting, and specifically to "I Will Always Love You." The interviewer asked, "Dolly, that song has touched so many hearts. What inspired you to write such a poignant farewell?" Dolly paused, a soft, wistful smile on her lips. It was time, she decided, to share a tiny piece of the truth. Not the whole story, but enough to honor her secret. "Well," she began, "it's about loving someone so much that you know you have to let them go for their own good and for yours. It's about wishing them well, no matter what." She looked down for a moment, remembering that phone call with Colonel Parker. The hard choice she had to make. "The king of rock and roll," the interviewer gasped. "Elvis Presley?" Dolly just nodded, her smile soft and sad. Yes, he wanted to record "I Will Always Love You," and he even sang it to Porter Wagoner. Porter said he sang it like an angel, and he truly understood the song. She took a shaky breath. "I often think about that. And I know. I just know that he carried a piece of that song with him." This was the closest Dolly had ever come to publicly revealing the depth of her crush, the true inspiration behind the song. It wasn't a dramatic confession, but a quiet, heartfelt tribute. It was her way of letting the world know that Elvis in his passing had finally received the message she had penned for him. All those years ago, the news of this revelation spread like wildfire. Fans, musicians, and the public were touched. It added another layer of poignancy to an already beloved song. Dolly had kept her secret for so long, nurturing it, protecting it, and now in her own subtle way she had laid it at his feet, a beautiful, enduring tribute to the unseen listener, the king who had inadvertently inspired her own journey to greatness. The song had found its way, not through a record, but through a shared moment, a whispered truth, and an understanding that transcended time and space. In the years following Elvis Presley's passing and Dolly's quiet revelation about his connection to I Will Always Love You, her own star continued to ascend to stratospheric heights. She became not just a country star, but a global icon known for her music, her vibrant personality, and her unwavering authenticity. Her songs became anthems, her presence a beacon of joy and strength. I Will Always Love You continued to be one of her most beloved compositions. It was re-released in 1982, becoming a #1 hit again, and then famously became a worldwide phenomenon when Whitney Houston covered it in 1992, making it one of the best-selling singles of all time. Every time Dolly heard Whitney's powerful rendition, a lump formed in her throat. She knew the song's journey, its humble beginnings in a small mountain cabin, its secret dedication, and now its global reach. She never regretted her decision to keep the publishing right. It had been a hard choice, an emotional one, but it allowed her to retain control over her creative legacy, and more importantly, it allowed the song to remain entirely hers, a pure expression of her heart. She often thought about what might have happened if Elvis had recorded it. It would have been magnificent, no doubt, but perhaps the secret's special meaning would have been lost in the roar of his fame. As Dolly grew older, wiser, and more accomplished, her crush on Elvis transformed into a deep, abiding respect and a fond memory. The longing of her youth had matured into an appreciation for his unparalleled artistry and the profound impact he had on the world and on her own life. He wasn't just a crush anymore. He was a catalyst, a silent mentor who had pushed her to reach for her own stars. Occasionally in interviews, she would be asked about him, about the story of I Will Always Love You. She would always tell it with a gentle smile, a hint of wistfulness in her eyes. She spoke of his incredible talent, his kindness, and the magic of his presence. She never sensationalized her crush, keeping it personal, a sacred part of her journey. She would often say, I think we were kindred spirits, in a way. Two country kids who just loved to sing. And she believed it. She believed that despite their vastly different paths to stardom, they shared a common thread, a deep, honest love for music, and a profound connection to their audiences. Years later, Dolly was inducted into countless halls of fame. She stood on grand stages accepting awards, performing for millions. She had her own theme park, her own empire. She had become the queen of country, a legend in her own right. And sometimes, in the quiet moments backstage, she would close her eyes and imagine that little girl in Locust Ridge, strumming her corncob guitar, dreaming of Elvis. She knew she had fulfilled that little girl's promise. She had written the song, and in a way that defied all logic and expectation, it had reached him, not as a direct message whispered in his ear, but as a melody that resonated with his spirit. A tribute that he understood even if the world didn't know its full depth until years later. One evening at a star-studded gala, Dolly was mingling with fellow artists when she felt a familiar tug at her heart. She saw a photograph on a display table, a candid shot of Elvis from his younger days. His smile bright, his eyes full of that unique sparkle. She walked over, a soft smile touching her lips. He truly was something, wasn't he? A voice beside her said it was an older musician, someone who had known Elvis well. Dolly nodded, her gaze still fixed on the photo. He was a true king. He had said that he had wished he had written her song, the song she wrote for him. The musician smiled gently. He understood Dolly. He truly understood. Dolly looked at the photo of Elvis, his youthful, vibrant face smiling back at her. And in that moment, she knew with absolute certainty that her secret crush had been more than just a fleeting infatuation. It had been a profound connection, a powerful inspiration, and a love that indeed would always live in her heart. She had become a star carrying his influence, and the songs she wrote for him, as a beautiful, enduring secret, a testament to the magic of dreams and the power of a heart truly understood